Hello, everyone. This is Tijen Genco. You are tuned into Coaching with Mastery and Elegance with Tijen Genco. I am a Master Certified Coach, Advanced Certified Team Coach, and Board Certified Health and Wellness Coach. And we are here with my dear beloved companion, Sajili Mehta. Welcome, Sajili.
Good evening, Tijen. How wonderful.
It's beautiful to have you here, and we're going to talk about an interesting content today for coaches or people, as usual, who are interested in self-awareness, self-development, self-growth. And what do you want to say about our topic to our audience, Sajili?
Sure. In fact, I'm very eager to. It all started, Tijen. I was reading this small book called Sparks of Genius. And amongst many other things, I'm going to pick up two short quotes from that book. And one of the quotes is, "It is by logic that we prove, but by intuition that we discover."
Mm.
And this was said by Henry Poincaré, who's supposed to be one of the greatest mathematicians of the 19th century, and a theoretical physicist, an engineer, and a philosopher of science. I'm going to give you another quote, which says, "Everything purposeful in scientific thinking began with feeling," by Claude Bernard, the founder of human physiology.
Mm.
So in this context, I thought it might be interesting to clarify what is intuition, because is it something which is anti-logic, anti-data, science, intellect, are typical more reliable ways of knowing, and therefore I chose these so-called science, what should I call them, scientific codes in that sense, right? And then I also thought, building on that, one could like, for example, when somebody says gut feel or follow your heart, so what happens to the rest of the body,
Mm.
you
Yeah.
know and many similar explorations. And then with that clarity we could see the role of intuition in coaching.
Mhm.
And then one thing led to another, and I said, why not close with something like coaching, AI, and intuition, and see what that picture looks like? What would you say?
I think it's a lovely recipe for a
Nice.
podcast episode.
Okay. Okay, good. I'm glad. So, well, then, in my own understanding and in my own experience, uh, I, uh, I would say coaching. I'm saying intuition is a particular way of listening and knowing, without the need for a conscious reasoning. That's that's how I seem to understand it. And well, over to you. I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Thank you for sharing that. And my understanding is similar, right? I look at the etymology of the word. In Middle English, it has a meaning of direct cognition. I looked at the other ancient words as well. So then, geeky part of me that teaches a neurological approach to coaching and studies human cognition, um, and often says to my students, what are you leaving at the table unattended? That makes me then think we are conditioned so much so in a way that we receive information in the human system, but if we don't bring pass that through the faculties of reasoning, we're not necessarily considering that as a valid information in our cognitive responses. So then intuition is a form of learning, just like anything else. And if we think about human system as an intelligent multi-sensory organism, then it seems like we are biased through to particular faculties and sensory input for learning, and learn to dismiss or not necessarily know how to organize the other form of learning. So if we're accepting, and in my approach, I see human beings more than five senses. We have I mean, think about our nervous system. It's a whole receptive network. We are made out of some 30 billion cells. Every one of them is receiving, I mean, skin, right? Just through skin. We're receiving a lot of information, and then we categorize them in a certain way to dismiss them and so on. So the intuition, to me, direct cognition. And I use this term to distinguish from reasonable analytical learning from an embodiment of the wisdom, which means I usually spell it as embodiment, that there is a embracing the incoming wisdom. And I use that comprehension, which is you just get it, right? That's different than analyzing, reasoning, and getting yourself to comply with that incoming information versus it is. There is no discussion about it. You just got it. And this is where I'm advancing us a little bit like metaphors. When we present what we hear from somebody in a form of a metaphor, they just get it. There is no analysis about it. So, and if we think about then the direct cognition, I guess we can get into it now or later that there is certainly neuroscience, cognitive science, all that behind it. A lot of research done last few years around gut-brain axis and the gut intelligence. But it is not only that, there is much more. And then each energy center, if it's fitting to our audience belief system, receives information in the code of the energy. There is, in the Kabbalistic terms, right, there is a center in the middle of the chest called Da'at, which is a void. To me, it's like a black hole receiving information through the void. And there is also Alta Major Chakra, which is lesser known in the back of the head towards amygdala, that is known as the mail drop of the human being. There is the intuitive information. There is the third eye, the pineal gland, the projective information. So we are multisensory structures, and we have multi receptors, and we need to have a multi processing ways into cognition, and intuition is in a way bundled up all the rest of the receptive information into a category. To me, needs to be further defined.
Why was I expecting anything but this? So just in the way you've spoken about it, you've embraced all, not just embraced, made us aware of embracing that inner wisdom, but you've also embraced all of mankind having this ability. So my next question, before I ask that, I just want to say that, as I was reading and preparing, I read about Carl Jung and four broad categories of intuition or kinds of intuition that he speaks about. What I did is I correlated them with a few examples to, so for example, there is sensing intuition where you just pick up clues from the environment.
Mhm.
And like you said, embrace that incoming wisdom. So we have Jacinda Ardern, who picked up the cues in New Zealand, picked up the cues of and sensed that COVID would be way more intense, and they were one of the first to go into lockdown. I sort of went back in American history, and it is said that Kennedy, at the time in the early 60s, all his military aides were giving one particular recommendation of airstrikes. This is the Cuban missiles crisis. And he somehow, the word, and I read it a couple of places, they use the word, he sensed
Mm.
something different, and then he navigated it differently, and it's apparently said to be a master class in intuitive calm crisis leadership,
Mm.
right? We have another kind called thinking intuition, where you solve problems joining the dots with scattered data, and of course the most beautiful example would be Sherlock Holmes.
Mm.
You know, we then have a feeling intuition, which I think is when you're picking up nuances of the body and the tone, something which coaches and therapists are almost trained for.
Yeah.
We also have judging intuition, which is more in terms of strategy and vision. And I love this phrase, the way it was described, where the leader senses into a trend or a need which the people themselves haven't yet tuned into.
Mhm.
And the example is of Steve Jobs, who said, it's time for one device for the phone and the music. Or we have Indra Nooyi, who was the Pepsi head, who sensed a cultural shift towards healthy food.
Mm.
And Starbucks, Howard Schultz, who said, look, there I can sense the need for a third place beyond office and home. All this. So when I'm reading all this, and now, as you say, it it probably means that all of us are intuitive in our own way and to varying degrees. And that's what I thought we could probably take
Mm.
and see what you have to say about that.
Beautiful. Absolutely.
Mm.
I'm in agreement with you. Based on our human structure and biologies, right? Maybe some of us gonna be more advanced and authentically designed to
Mm.
receive may, main faculties of reception, just like right-handed versus left-handed or
Mm.
multidexterous, right? So, and there is also social upbringing. If somebody says, don't, oh, that's not okay, don't feel the emotion, then you may be authentically attuned into that level of reception, but you will dismiss it. So, certainly, we are all a cube in the human design. This is why I say that people sit in like a complex dashboard on a plane and only pushing one button because they're turned trained to look at that or afraid or whatever that may be. And so if we look at it, I think that I often not like to categorize and qualify things. I remember that uh, Robin Wall Kimmerer is a botanist. She has a native Indian background and she studied botany. And she, in her discussions, she talks about when she went to the School of Botany, she asked, why are these two plants coming together in the nature? And her professors said to
Mm.
her, like, we don't study that. So, in a way, when we study certain things in detail to qualify, to quantify, that whatever, we forget its spirit.
Mm.
So then the spirit is a sensory intuitive experience, at least for the time being. And
Mm.
relating to that and learning through that, it's a different learning. You cannot, you can understand a plant as a rose and a qualify and quantify its species and all that. But how do you understand the one rose's a frequency in its fragrance,
Mm.
tonality in expression, and a difference in the next.
Mm.
When you're making a medicinal plants and so on. So it's a different way of learning and relating. And then the intuitive capabilities are helpful in a way, enhancing human communications
Mm.
to appropriate, intentionally appropriate which receptors to enhance in a communication
Mm.
and engage to have a better outcomes, more harmonic
Mm.
outcomes.
Mm. Lots of possible questions come to mind. But I think really you've used the word dismiss, and each time you've used that word, it's brought up in me, what do I dismiss?
Mhm.
And I think getting curious around that could probably be a segue into seeing, I may not realize what influences have made me dismiss something which could be enhancing communication in a more deliberate way. Yeah.
Yeah, I love ancient cultures, and I was studying ancient Celtic mythology, Celtic wisdom, and all that. There are documents. We could call them stories and myths, but there were documents that at some point the fairies were visible to humans and they were interacting
Mm.
and so on. So there, after a while, they become invisible. Now, if that was true, one wonders right,
Sure.
what else we're filtering in our even
Yeah.
visual receptors not to see it. I don't know,
Yeah.
because a lot of the children can see things and we tell them that it doesn't exist. Are they truly hallucinating or seeing something, right?
Sure.
That's a question we need to start asking.
As you say that, I get reminded that in the same book, which I referred to earlier, at some place I read that Einstein said that, or at least it's claimed that he said that he never knew where his visual and muscular thinking would take him. Just yeah. And also he said something like, no scientist thinks in formulae. So when you spoke about the little girl and the Celtic mythology, somehow I got reminded of that.
Yeah.
But maybe we can link this with and you spoke about when you said the Kabbalistic, they say the Kabbalahs, they talk about the void, or you spoke about the chakra and the multi-sensory organisms that we are. So would you like to say something about this mind body unit as a container of intuition?
Yes, absolutely. If we're actually using intuition as a faculty to comprehend and cognize, certainly everything. And this is where I developed multi-linguistic pathways in coaching, like energetic coaching, somatic coaching, neurologic coaching, and all that to enhance coaches' capabilities of that level of reception and process analysis in a relationship. So the holistic, in my teachings, which I call Genco method holistic listening and response, includes engaging in intentionally engaging multifacets of human being in relationship to the others.
Mm. Mm-hmm. So, well, then intuition can be considered as a skill which we can develop and hone in.
Yes, that direct knowing, right? If there is a
Yes.
capability of cognizing something directly, maybe through eyes or whatever, right? Do we need to read about it, analyze it, slowing down the process into changing into a actionable learning or categorized learning?
Mm, mhm,
Like when I was in India, I was constantly in awe. Some of the things that made me so much in awe was the colors as well as the eyes of the people. I would look at it and see the depth and emotional depth and sadness coming through. Even some of the people I didn't know anything about their background. So we don't need to have a dialogue. So I could actually directly receive what they're projecting without the words.
mm,
And it's not unique to me, right? We can actually see it in a bus, in a cafe or somewhere that we're receiving something, at least an emotional um, expressions, silent emotional expressions or otherwise. So,
mm,
yeah.
mm. I think even as you say all this, it's somehow very reassuring that one, that all of us are intuitive, and two, that it is something which can be a muscle can which can be built, and therefore
Correct.
programs like all that which you offer. And if you spoke about India, so I got reminded that there is, I think he's a 15th or a 16th century a mystic poet called Saint Kabir.
Hmm.
Right? And so I'm going to say this in Hindi, and then I'll do a loose translation. Uh, and there is they call it a doha. What it says is, "Karat karat abhyas ke jadmati hot sujan, rasri awat jaat te sil par padat nishan." Basically, what it's saying is that even what should I say, a soft rope, which you use to pull out the pail from the well, but when you do it over a period of time, the stone edges of the well will get the mark of
Yeah.
uh, the rope being pulled. So I guess that's how neural pathways get built when we open ourselves to that kind of receiving.
Yes.
uh,
Right now, because we are all in a horse binder, just learn this way, the others are invalid. Uh,
mm,
so social cognition, right, needs to be exemplified and normalized for people to do that.
mm,
And if
mm,
you think about that, our liver does a lot of things for us. Heart does a lot of things for us. Don't you think they are intelligent and they're receiving something? Pineal gland and thyroid hormone. I mean, if we learn how to partner up with all the things that makes us in a way, then
mm,
we're no longer pushing the same button on the dashboard. We are receiving a lot of information. Now, can that overwhelm us? Probably. We still need some level of filtering, but I don't think we need additional filtering because our subconscious already is programming, organizing, categorizing, putting them in a particular way. We just need to understand when is it time for me to listen somebody with my eyes, when is it time for me to learn through my heart, when is
mm,
it, this is why I often engage experiential learning when I'm teaching something.
mm,
I just gave a talk last Friday on a coaching beyond the mind with Central Philadelphia, Florida chapter of ICF. And I started the session with the experiential experiments. So, and then the people were like, oh, wow, of course, I'm here to teach you coaching beyond the mind. Am I going to give you a lecture about it? It doesn't make
sure,
sense. So,
sure.
the more practice, there are different ways. People ask me, how do I develop my intuition? Get yourself out of the reasoning, right?
Mm,
Do dream journey. do sense things and call people to see if you sensing is right or what is happening for them, and engage in to go to the nature and see what you're receiving. So we could further develop our or reactivate our receptors into learning.
Reactivate is a lovely word. And so before I get into these areas of how we can do that and coaching and intuition, a question which comes to mind is then, is it because you spoke about the subconscious organizing it, is it then that intuition is always correct and right? Or, I mean, what would tell me that this is the voice of intuition and this is just my story?
Well, the thing is, just because something is researched by many, does it make it an absolute truth? No.
No.
It's the same thing, right? You're receiving information through a channel, but that's
Mm,
still not an absolute truth unless there are certain things that, like alta major chakra and other ways, that we receive information directly from Akashic records and other places that it's larger libraries. There is more standing true across the centuries, right? There is some things that we know to be true. So, of course, we can receive it and we can still look into the validity of that information, not
mm,
necessarily
mm,
intellectualize and invalidate, but
mm,
appropriate what we're receiving.
mm. I think it's very beautifully said. Appropriate what we are receiving, because I think it is quite natural. Like, for example, if my temperament is more sort of hyper vigilant or avoidant or reactive, then I need to be able to step back and, like you said, validate and see what part of it is appropriate.
Yes,
Would that,
and you're
yeah?
bringing up very important thing, right? When we are hypervigilant, different receptors are going to step forward.
Mm.
Are those the right receptors to receive that information? This is why we invite people into their breath, because the partnership with the breath often it brings us to the right reception channel.
Very wonderful. Very wonderful. And as you speak about inviting people, I think it might be a good place to bring in, should I say, intuition and coaching, intuition in coaching,
In
whichever way. Yes. Because, yes, beyond just the thoughts and the goals, as a coach, one is working with the whole person, the who. And something seems off, or there is a tone, or there is just a sense one has. But how do you see the two, and do you see them as two in that sense?
Absolutely. I mean, this is why I ended that conversation last week. What are you leaving at the table?
Mm.
If you are, as a coach, only focused into the problem at hand,
Mm.
you will miss the information that the noble act, their soul, is bringing into the quantum space between you and the client. And missing that is a huge thing, don't you think? Besides the emotions and other, I mean, we're talking about human becoming. So we need to listen in a multi different ways that what wants to happen through this person. And what is it that their emotional landscape is telling me right now? Their intellectual landscape is telling me right now. What are their linguistic cues? What am I receiving through my soul about this person, or whatever? There are multi ways of tuning in and get curious about.
You make it sound sacred, Tijen. Not that we didn't know, but still, when you speak about the quantum space between the client and the coach, and what they're bringing, what, even at that soul level, we use that word, and then what do you leave unattended? Yeah, it's quite lovely, quite lovely. I mean, just yesterday, I think I was speaking with somebody, and she was like, I don't know why I'm feeling so blocked. And it was almost as if one could see the machinery of her mind trying to resolve the block, and a very simple question which pointed her to more her heart and body uh, brought up a different trajectory. But yeah. So anything you'd like to say about building the muscle of intuition? You did refer to a lot of the programs which you have, but along with those, along with those, whether it's for coaches, whether it's for anybody else who's listening in.
Yes, certainly. I mentioned briefly earlier as well that intentional exercises about receiving information and learning cognition through different channels, such as maybe taking a sound bath and seeing what are you receiving and what is that doing to your system. Maybe taking a walk outside, looking to receive what is nature presenting. How can you connect to the spirit of the trees? How can you connect to the spirit of the birds? These are kind of different receptors. Getting out of the mind, doing a dream journey, engaging different receptors and different energy centers in the body, different processing mechanism. Listening somebody beyond words, like I was looking at people's eyes and sensing them and producing a response beyond words. So I think these are all different ways one can practice other faculties in learning, more experiential learnings, and listening. What are they intuiting in silence? What is coming? And what are they dismissing? I'm not going to call it simple meditation, but sitting in silence may be looking simple, which we know it is not as simple.
Yes.
And being awake and aware. And like I said, those intentional practices, such as tuning into somebody with their permission and see what they receive out of that, tuning into the nature, tuning into the sounds, the colors, and other ways, the touches to receive, tuning into the organs. What is happening to my pineal gland or third eye? What is happening to the back of my head? What is happening to my heart? What are my fingers? Right? Getting curious in multi ways. These could be helpful.
Quite wonderful. And then this definitely makes me wonder about the AI and the chatbots, and and a lot of conversation which is around how they're going to just take over the whole space of coaching and so on. What do you feel about AI and coaching, definitely in the context of intuition?
Well, let's remember that AI is learning information from a researched human publishings. They're not learning and advancing through the sensory capabilities. And it may take them a minute to do it, but right now, the main distinction of the human coaching and that is completely this gap I'm presenting into the holistic coaching. And if the coaches are reducing, I was mentoring back in the spring. And this is it's not a beginning class, but somehow that learning institution, or maybe that wasn't the instructor's intent, but the students learned to ask the client, oh, you brought the A, B, and C, which one is more important? You have to pick one, which is a pretty standard thing I hear, unfortunately, many coaching schools are teaching. That limits the curiosity of the interrelationship between those things in
Yes.
the human psyche. But even then, the subject of that conversation, which I was giving feedback as a mentor, was the client was saying, I need to organize my shopping and cooking so that I can put a dinner on a table. And the coach was insisting client pick one, and the client was saying, how can I pick one? They're so related, right?
Related, yeah.
So I said to the coach, why don't you ask more comprehensive, invitational questions? And the coach said, I didn't know if I can do that. And I said, don't allow anybody dumb down your communication skills. So even with our learning systems are, for one reason or another, diminishing the human capabilities, we have the faculties to question and expand beyond it. So I would invite every one of the people, specifically in human cognition, expansion, change facilitation, to be more curious about what is this? Right? What am I doing and how can I enhance this? Otherwise, the robots already know how to find the best evidence-based methods and formalize them in a structured conversation. Then we don't need humans to do that. That's the distinguishing effect.
I think it's lovely what you say. They're not learning through the senses, but through the research. That's how you started, and yeah. So I too feel that if it's something which is more limited to logistics or transactional, probably they could simplify one's life. But if we're really talking about a certain and human beings are complex. So if you're talking about any transformational, unless you look at what are the top 5 ways and what are the top 2 ways, then that's a different conversation. But something which is more life altering in that sense. Yeah, I do see how. Like I said, it's sacred work, the quantum space, to look at it like that.
Absolutely. And I can tell you, Sajili, as an assessor, right? I receive a lot of assessments and recordings, and unfortunately, some of them are scripted and read. And even at the master level coaching credentialing levels that people are doing this, that's saddening to my heart. But anyway, it is very recognizable that.
Well, that's mastery, Tijen. That's your mastery. Right?
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But it is very recognizable that what is scripted and what is organically taking place.
Quite lovely. Quite lovely. If you will allow me, when I was doing my master's, there was one of the programs. It said, the world speaks to us all the time through the sounds emanating from the blackness of the holes in our galaxies, to the messages that the natural world delivers to us on a constant basis, to the sensations that arise in our own bodies, and the synchronicities that wiggle their way into our limited experiences. This is written by, I think, a lady called Judy Ruth, and one other lady. Isn't that lovely?
It's gorgeous. Thank you for bringing
Yeah,
that in
yeah, yeah.
our quantum space.
Yes. No, and let me juxtapose this with another, just a line from another space where it said, "Yes, have dreams and go after them. Just leave room for magic. Just always leave room for magic." There's some author called John King or something, but I thought what we call magic is in a sense just this whole. It's really opening ourselves to receiving, because there's just so many multi-sensory organism, like you said.
Mhm. It's
Mm-hmm.
unorganized wisdom,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes,
That's the
yes, yes,
magic, right? Because when everything is so organized, there is no room for difference.
yes.
Yes.
Quite wonderful. Well, I think it's lovely, and I'll probably just now hand it over to you to see if there is anything else you would like to say on this topic, because I just feel so uh, almost relieved and reassured. I think that's a better word, of how we can, at whichever level we may be, keep investing in opening up our radar, to that perception.
Yeah,
So yeah,
faculties
yeah.
to be more. And of course that we didn't talk about some things that there are like psychedelic and other interventions or people using to
Mm,
enhance abruptly those some of those things. I would just say that whatever the way you are learning, make sure that's not disruptive
sure.
to the system, that I gave gentler way of enhancing these faculties. And
Mm,
so I would invite everyone to find their own unique receptors, like those. I often use this like an octopus way of knowing, right? Octopus suckles
mm,
you in the
yes, yes, yes.
it's very different than other ways of learning. So get your actually tentacles out and see what they bring, and how does that land on you. And is, as you said, it's Sajili, inner run through your inner faculties to validate. We're not inviting people into hallucinogenic life, but there is
Absolutely.
also a room for more color and sound and fragrances in our life than the dry, vetted, and so well organized knowledge, so that we also get to know the spirit of things.
Sure, sure. And I think that it also speaks into respecting respecting all that this body mind is able to do as it engages with this vast universe.
Absolutely, yes. Our
So,
system is like a universe, right? We have
sure,
so
sure,
many things. Absolutely.
sure.
Well, thank you for this beautiful
Thank you.
discussion, Sajili.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you,
Yes,
Tijen. Thank you. Always, always pleasure.
absolutely. Yes, and everyone, if you missed in the beginning, this is Coaching with Mastery and Elegance with Tijen Genco. It's an original podcast from Genco Coaching. If you liked what you heard, you can visit us at gencocoaching.com. Check our upcoming events and to be waitlisted in whatever you heard may be interesting in you if it's not listed in there. And remember, we would be appreciative if you leave us a feedback. Until next time, take good care.